The conference chamber of Station Nexus 7 hushed the moment Elena Reeves stepped onto the dais. Her presence alone drew a ripple through the assembled delegates, not because she radiated power or lineage but because she was different. At 28 standard years she'd become the youngest director the Galactic Commerce Guild had ever appointed. Worse, from some corners of the room she was the first human to hold the office. She wore her dark hair pulled into a practical bun and a simple gray suit. The insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps glinted from the front row like a small, stubborn star. Her arrival did not please everyone. Ambassador Crether of the Vaxian Empire, a massive reptilian whose polished obsidian scales absorbed the hall's light, shifted with a sigh of animal displeasure. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, he had spent 6 centuries watching his species dominate this sector. He had no patience for novelty. Before Elena could begin, Crether's voice cut the room like a jagged stone. "I must object to this farce," he boomed. He accused humans of being inexperienced, lacking wisdom, and biologically unfit to oversee guild operations. The Mefarian delegate, crystalline and quiet, offered a soft, sympathetic chime, and other representatives merely watched, intent on how the human would respond. Elena stepped down and walked directly to the ambassador. She stopped just out of reach, tilted her chin, and met his gaze with a calm that steadied the room. She didn't deny the facts Crether invoked. Humans were young on the galactic stage and physically fragile compared to the armored Vaxians. But she asked the delegates, and Crether, to see what fragility had taught humanity: the economy of time, the ruthless efficiency born of short lives, the unwillingness to allow problems to fester until they became crises. Her opening was not a plea, it was a reframing. Where Crether saw weakness, she would show a different set of strengths: speed, adaptability, and a refusal to cede initiative to centuries of bureaucratic delay. The audience leaned in. This was not only a defense of an appointment, it was the first stroke in a campaign to redefine what leadership would look like in a changing galaxy. Elena's reply didn't rely on rhetoric alone, she produced data. With a flick of her data pad, holographic charts unfolded between her and Ambassador Crether, painting numbers in midair for the assembly to see. Human-managed stations, she announced, had increased productivity by 47% in the last quarter. Conflict resolution incidents had fallen by 63%. Resource allocation efficiency had climbed 51%. The statistics landed like measured blows, precise, verifiable, and stark. Crether sneered that numbers could be spun. Elena anticipated that objection and pushed farther, not into theory but into hard, verifiable events. 6 months earlier, she reminded them, a mining colony on Hesperine had suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. Experts predicted weeks to evacuate and months to repair. Human engineers restored operations in 11 days with 0 casualties. More recently, when the trade route across the Corvox Nebula buckled under spatial anomalies, mathematicians declared new pathways would demand years of work. Human AI-assisted navigators delivered 3 alternate routes in 72 hours. Her argument sharpened. Human limitations, short lifespans, fragile bodies, lack of ancestral dominance, force an uncompromising approach to problem solving. You cannot wait on centuries-long committees when lives and livelihoods hang in the balance. Humans make decisions quickly, they iterate fast, they accept risk because delay is costlier than action. The hall was silent as she laid the evidence bare. Delegates exchanged glances. Data was harder to dismiss than taunts. Crether's frown deepened. He growled the obvious retort: humans could hardly survive his planet's toxic atmosphere, and Elena met it with the same composed truth. Humans had never relied on living in every environment. Instead, they had learned to reshape environments to suit them, turning deserts into gardens and frozen wastelands into functioning cities. By combining quantifiable wins with a philosophical argument about the virtue of urgency, Elena recast her species' supposed liabilities as strategic advantages. The debate had moved beyond petty prejudice into measurable outcomes, and the outcome of that shift was already altering the mood in the chamber. As Elena stepped inward, the assembly felt the weight of history pressing against her words. Crether's baritone accused humans of fragility. She accepted that label openly and then dismantled its assumptions. Fragility, she said, breeds caution. Short lives breed urgency. When you cannot afford to wait, you build systems that do not depend on a single titan to carry the world on their back. Humans design resilience into structure and process instead of leaning on brute force. She painted a human story anyone could recognize. We do not merely adapt to hostile worlds, we transform them. Deserts become gardens, frozen wastes become thriving cities. Humanity's answer to inhospitable environments is not meek compliance but engineering, creativity, and collective effort. That was the heart of her claim. Human weakness and brief lifespans had produced cultural traits the Guild desperately needed: improvisation, speed, and cross-disciplinary generalism. The Assembly's attention bent toward the Mefarian delegate and the Auroran envoy as Elena enumerated what each species brought to the table. The crystalline Mefarians offered computational might. The Aurorans brought artistic vision. The Vaxians, strength and resilience. Humans, she argued, were the glue, generalists who could bridge specialists and build pragmatic solutions. It was not a claim to superiority, it was a promise of complementarity. Crether countered, with a rumbling, guttural disdain, that humans would fail where the Vaxian form excelled. Elena did not shrink. She returned to practicalities. The Guild now faced new pressures: resource scarcity, rising membership of divergent species, and rekindled old conflicts. In this new era, adherence to the old ways might be the greater risk. What had kept empires secure for 6 centuries could blind them to evolving threats. Leadership, she said, must change to match the moment. Her final lines in this exchange were quiet but unyielding. She would not apologize for being human, nor would she let tradition chain the Guild to outdated responses. The moment demanded risk, rapid decision-making, and the capacity to synthesize many strengths into workable policy. For a body used to ruling through intimidation and slow accumulation of advantage, Elena proposed a radical alternative: govern through agility and coalition. After a moment that felt like the inhale before a storm, Crether's expression shifted. What began as scorn softened into something closer to calculation, perhaps respect. He inclined his massive head and issued a conditional acceptance. Show us what humanity can do, but fail and he would move to remove her. Elena met the condition with a smile and the human ritual of extending a hand. What followed was an image at once awkward and beautiful. The Vaxian ambassador, enormous claw enclosing the human palm with unusual care. Crether's voice rumbled again, not with mockery now but with admission. He conceded there was more to humanity than he had credited. Elena's reply was equally measured. She would not expect anything less than scrutiny, and if success came, she would want Crether to be among those honest enough to admit he had been wrong. The assembly erupted afterward, not into the raw fury of an attempted revolt but into vigorous discussion. Delegates weighed the facts and argued the implications. Elena returned to the platform aware that this was simply the first skirmish won. Optics and a single vote didn't secure the structural change she intended. She had won the opening battle of narrative. Human capability was now in the room as a tested hypothesis, not a dismissible prejudice. The larger story, the one that would play out in months and years, would be about implementation. Elena knew she would need to convert short-term wins into systemic shifts. New protocols, faster decision pathways, cross-species task forces that mixed Vaxian strength, Mefarian calculation, Auroran creativity, and human urgency. The handshake marked the beginning of tentative cooperation. The real work was rebuilding institutions to be resilient, responsive, and inclusive. As the delegates filed away, the station hummed with the electricity of change. For Elena Reeves, the future was a ledger of risks and deadlines. For the Guild, the arrival of a human director signaled a test. Could tradition adapt to an era that rewarded speed over solidity? The answer, for the first time, was no longer a foregone conclusion.